Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a very, very interesting question that came up in our research,
Yes.
and it really it's a fun one. It's kind of a silly one at first, but then the more you kind of think about it, the more interesting it becomes. So, are you ready to dive in?
Let's dive.
Okay. So the question is pepper steak and fries a proper meal for a Lord Commander?
Mm.
And I just I love this question because on the surface it's just like what does that even mean, right?
Yeah.
But when you start thinking about like all the different things that go into that question, like what is a Lord Commander?
Mm.
Like is it like a Game of Thrones kind of thing? Is it
Yeah.
like a historical, Roman centurion type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it really conjures up this image of, well, first of all, it makes you ask the question, what exactly is a proper meal for
Yeah.
somebody like that? And I think it goes back to how do we perceive leadership?
Mm-hmm.
How do we perceive authority? Do we think about, um, I don't know, like a king, sitting down to a 12-course meal?
Right, exactly. It's like all the pomp and circumstance, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
like you picture them, like in a castle with like, servants bringing out all these different dishes and it's like this big elaborate thing.
Right, like, does the food have to be fancy? Like, is that part of it,
Yeah.
Do it have to be something, you know, incredibly expensive and rare? Like, I'm trying to think,
Yeah.
what would that even look like?
And also, the setting, right? Like is it like you said, is it a castle? Is it like a modern day, situation room?
Yeah.
Like what is the context of this meal?
Yeah.
And what does that say about the Lord Commander? Because, if they're having steak and fries, is that like a humble meal? Is that like a, kind of like a down to earth kind of like I'm one of the troops kind of thing?
Wow.
Just like you. Yeah.
Yeah. Or is it like, they're so busy, dealing with whatever the Lord Commander deals with,
Yeah.
that they don't have time for like a big fancy meal, you know?
Yeah. And it makes you think about, like, what's the purpose of the meal? I mean, is it purely sustenance?
Hmm.
Is it fuel? Or is there a symbolic element to it?
Mm.
Is it meant to impress? Is it meant to build camaraderie?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, and it makes me think about like, historical figures, right? Like, like I think about like you know, a general like George Washington, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you could kind of picture him like, having a simple meal with his troops, right? Like,
Right.
it wasn't like he was like, off in his own tent, having like a five-star meal,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know? So I don't know. It's just like, it's so interesting to think about like how the choice of food, can reflect on a leader,
Totally. And I think that that's a really interesting point because it does make you consider, like, is there a deliberate choice being made here?
Hmm.
Is this Lord Commander choosing steak and fries to kind of project a certain image, to be
Mhm.
relatable?
Mm.
Or is it truly just like I'm busy, I'm hungry, I need to eat.
Yeah.
This is what's available.
Yeah.
But-
And it reminds me of how, certain world leaders have kind of like made their food choices like part of their persona, right? Like, there's a
Absolutely.
president who is really well known for his love of cheeseburgers.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was kind of like, seen as like you know, a man of the people, down to earth kind of thing.
Yeah, like an everyman kind of thing.
Yeah. But then there were also people who criticized it, right? They were like, well, that's not very presidential, you know?
Right, right. You should be eating something, more, I don't know, more refined.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's all about perception. So
Context.
it really is. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to like, who is this Lord Commander? What
Yeah.
are their values? What are they trying to achieve?
Mm,
You know? And how does their choice of food reflect that?
yeah. So, listeners, we're going to leave you with that question. If you were the Lord Commander, what would your proper meal be?
What would it say about you?
What would it say about you? Think about it. It's a lot more interesting than you might think.
Indeed.
Until next time,
Happy eating.
happy eating.
Bye.